Welcome everybody to the Horasis Extraordinary Meeting. It's great to have you join us from all over the world. I would like to introduce our panel session right now, which is called Revitalizing Economic Growth. Of course, this is the topic we have to talk about in these coronavirus pandemic times. This is something that affects all of us. My name is Martina Fox. I'm an international TV anchor and a business journalist based in London and Zurich, currently talking to you from Switzerland. Without further ado, I would like to introduce now our distinguished panelists. We're still waiting for some people to join our virtual room, our online stage, so please bear with us. But we have two excellent speakers here with us already. First of all, I would like to introduce Ms. Sujata Koirala. She's the former Deputy Prime Minister of Nepal. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sujata.
Good morning.
And we have live from Tokyo joining us today, Mr. Oki Matsumoto. He's the chairman of Monex Group in Japan. Thank you also, Oki, for joining us. It's great to have you from Asia already. It's a bit later in the day. It's still pretty early here in Switzerland. COVID-19, of course, has changed our world forever. Nothing is as it was before a couple of months ago, with so many economic and political uncertainties. The International Monetary Fund, for example, the IMF, is now predicting a deeper recession than previously forecast. They expect global output to shrink by some 4.9% this year before a recovery to 5.4% in 2021. So what kind of challenges are we going to face? I would like to start our discussion right now with a 60-second challenge to both of you at the moment, how to revitalize economic growth, our topic. I would like to give the floor, first of all, to Sujata. How can we do this? How can we achieve this?
Okay, Martina, thank you very much. I am happy to join this virtual meeting. It is such a pleasure to see distinguished speakers today. The outbreak of coronavirus has been devastating in terms of cost of human lives across the globe. The COVID-19 pandemic has also caused economic catastrophe worldwide. Global economy is shrinking and pushing us backward. The primary indicators are so depressing about the global economy falling into an unprecedented recession. A report of IMF, as you mentioned, says it could be a major economic recession after the Great Economic Depression of the 1930s and will be worse than the financial crisis of 2008 and 9. No one, not even economists, seem to be sure when the normality will return. There are forecasts that 2021 would also see a partial recovery. Given the centrality of the human capital, the recovery period depends how quick and effective healthcare facilities we can provide and manage. It is my feeling that only a secure and super healthcare facilities in place and backed by adequate resources will help for the resumption of economic activity to create what we call a new normal. To prevent long-term negative consequences of health and economic emergencies, the governments and communities require more unity, more cooperation, solidarity, and a collective and cooperative global response. So more importantly, early innovation of vaccines is largely required to prevent, contain, and mitigate the viruses so that global stability and economic revival arrives sooner than later. There is a danger COVID-19 pandemic pushing larger number of people into poverty trap. It has caused jobless, soaring, lowering income, higher health expenses, higher household expenses, expenses, low productivity, mental stress, low consumption, domestic violence, and social distress and imbalance. Gender violence seems to be another pandemic in the making. In Nepal, this is very much rising. Moreover, the collapse of commodity prices, capital flow, reversal, unemployment, fixed requiring expenses will lead to the closure of factories, labor unrest, and heavy financial losses. So I will tell you now about Nepal. Can I? Or
We will move on to Oki right now. I need also to say that we have a few speakers who are not able to join us. So Ms. Faustia Kofi, she's the Vice President of the National Assembly in Afghanistan. She just sent me a WhatsApp message that she's in important talks with the Taliban in Doha right now. So unfortunately, she is not able to join us. We're also still waiting for His Excellency Francisco Daquila, the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of the Philippines. I think there are some technical issues, and also we're still waiting for Mr. Eric Bergloff, the new Chief Economist of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, who is trying to join as well. So while we're waiting, I would like to move on to Oki now with your 60-second recipe how to revitalize global economic growth.
Well, thank you, Martina. But it's not easy to come up with 60 seconds recipe to revitalize the world economy.
Right?
But my business is an online space. Right, and we are actually, my company is doing online brokerage in Japan, in the States, and Hong Kong and China. And we are actually having, good, how do you say, good volume, since this COVID situation started. I sit on the board of MasterCard as well in the States, and listening to them, again, there are many areas of certain businesses. They are actually growing much more than it used to be. Okay, so it's not just the entire world is dipping. It's like there's some part of the business is not doing good, but some part is doing good. And I think it is essentially important to correctly change the regulations. With COVID, everything really changed. But I have to say that many regulations, the legal framework, many things are still, before COVID, right? So for the business sector or entrepreneurs, then to work with the governments and correctly and quickly change the regulations to fit to the current post-COVID world. I think that will be very important to revitalize the world economy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Oki. We have now His Excellency Francisco Daquila joining us, Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of the Philippines. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
As I understand, the question is on revitalizing economic growth.
Yes, exactly. In a short couple of sentences, what is your idea? What is your success recipe to revitalize economic growth? I think His Excellency has just dropped out again. I hope he can come back very soon. Otherwise, we will just carry on the conversation. Oh, no, you're back. You're back,
Okay.
Your Excellency. So let us know. How to revitalize economic growth, Your Excellency? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can speak.
Okay.
How shall we revitalize economic growth?
Okay. Now, let me approach it from the Philippines point of view.
Please.
Now, most essential that we've found is the ability to craft and implement measures that squarely address this pandemic and its impact. So, in our case, um, the central bank, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, government implemented very early on a wide range of measures within the ambit of monetary policy and banking supervision. And this included the insurance of sufficient liquidity in the market in order to support also government programs to save the livelihoods because of the that were affected by the lockdown, and to maintain stability of the financial system and to ensure continued delivery of financial services to the public, as well as to shore up confidence and cushion economic activity. So what we've found is that very early on, in March, as the impact of the pandemic became very uncertain, financial markets tended to dry up. And given these measures, we have restored normalcy to domestic financial markets. So this one also illustrates the need for a whole of government approach and systems thinking in order to find solutions. And in our case, we also have a very active private sector that is carrying out various initiatives to alleviate the plight of affected Filipinos. So we coordinated with the national government, provided the national government provisional advances in the amount of 300 billion pesos. And the funds were used by the government in providing support to families and livelihoods. This is well within the provisions of the Charter of the BSP and subject to limits imposed by the Charter. And in so doing, we preserve the independence of the BSP. This is a very short-term facility, and the constraints preclude us from financing the deficit on the longer term. And we also cooperated with other central banks to pursue initiatives that are contributing to economic growth and financial stability. Third, that we have found essential is the recognition and the seizing of opportunities behind the challenges. That is, taking the crisis as a lesson for forward planning. And the pandemic and restrictions have accelerated the digital transformation of financial services. So we've taken this opportunity to further support and implement digitalization initiatives, particularly on the payment systems. So thank you for the
Thank
opportunity.
you so much for your overview. I would like to continue our conversation with Ms. Koirala. So, Sujata, of course, the impact of the coronavirus pandemic has been really huge on Nepal. Nepal is a wonderful country. I've been there several times. Lots of mountains, a lot of tourists usually. What has been the impact, and how soon do you think can we restart the domestic economic recovery?
Like other developing and developed countries, Nepal is also struggling to overcome this crisis. Nepal, a landlocked and least developed country, has its own features. Economy projected to suffer greatly with the decline of remittance inflow, tourism industry, and international trade. It is no exaggeration to say that remittance is the mainstay of the Nepali economy, which represents more than 1/4 of national GDP. Nepali migrant workers sent more than $8.64 billion in 2019, making the country the biggest beneficiaries of remittance in the world. But this year it is expected to drop by 14% or even more because of economic distress stemming from the pandemic. Similarly, another pillar of Nepali economy is tourism industry, which is suffering immensely. The reduced flow of tourist restrictions on the entry of citizens from infected countries and the cancellation of Visit Nepal 2020 have put the industry in peril. It is verified that Nepal has a huge amount of natural resources such as mines and minerals, different metallic and non-metallic ores, hydrocarbons, hydroelectricity, herbal and medicinal plants. Now we should focus on prospect and extract them from which we can generate large number of employment and revenue, because most of the people are going to come back. All the youth, they will lose their job and they are going to come back to Nepal. And we have also agriculture. A lot of people depend on that also, farming, and so we can focus on that. Like Nepal, Rashtra Bank, which is our central bank of Nepal, announced its monetary policy for the fiscal year 2020-21 that unveiled rescue packages to mitigate the economic effects of COVID-19. It promised to support the extension of loan repayment deadline, refinance facility, grace period extension of infrastructure projects, and targeted lending in productive sectors as cheaper rate as key measures for relief and revival of various sectors affected by the virus. So micro, small and medium enterprises contribute a major role in most economies, regardless of developing and developed countries around the globe. Such enterprises comprise of 90% of businesses and more than 70% of employment worldwide. It also contributes up to 40% of national income, GDP in global economies. Since small and medium enterprises are the backbone of Nepali economy, it is therefore necessary to address their concerns. So as we believe that every cloud has silver lining, COVID-19 pandemic has forced us to see some opportunities amidst mountains of challenges to the Nepali economy too. Therefore, we should build up an entrepreneurship-based economy for the sustainable growth. Number of youths are expected to return back homeland, losing their jobs from abroad, and this could be a good time to deploy them into production and other entrepreneur-related activities, revive village economy. And, in Nepal, we always look at the big cities. But now people are thinking that they should go back to the village and develop the cities and agriculture and farming and activities. So there are positive side also, and we always depend on foreign investment. Nepali economy was very dependent on foreign economy, and now people are realizing that we have to stand on our own feet. So these are the positive sides, to be more independent.
There is always a light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you so much. I've just heard that unfortunately, the new feature coming from the AIRB has technical issues, so we'll just carry on the conversation for of us. Okay, Mr. Matsumoto, I would like to, we talked about the policy levels. I would like to talk about the private sector as well in the COVID-19 pandemic. You are the chairman of Monex Group, one of the biggest financial companies in Japan, and a huge online securities trading company as well. From your perspective, what kind of policy changes do you want to see to really revitalize the private sector and these businesses?
Well, can you repeat the last part of the question again?
What kind of policy measures would you like to see to kickstart the Japanese economy?
The Japanese economy, I have to say, compared to probably most of the developed countries, the dip of economy because of the COVID be probably somehow limited. Because the somehow that the pandemic is not really strong in Japan.
Why is that mostly thinking?
I don't know. There are many hypotheses around that. So far, there have been only 1,500 deaths in Japan total to date this year because of the COVID, which is among the all deaths in Japan, due to anything like cancer or heart attack or accident or whatever. Among the all deaths, the COVID, the deaths because of COVID represents only 0.2%. Only 0.2% of the entire death. It's really nothing in Japan. So still people are worried about, so everything is actually very close to normal. I go to the office every day, and restaurants are open, and transportation is moving, and so things are very, very normal. Except we don't see any tourists from abroad, right? If it's a Chinese or Europeans, Americans, we don't see any tourists. But basically, the domestic economy is somehow expanding. I think and also the government is really now shifting the policy to try to revitalize the economy. They're doing, the government-sponsored campaign to subsidize the travelers inside the country. So Japanese go to other parts of the Japan. The government is subsidizing those activities. Government is going to subsidize the eating at the restaurants as well. So we are doing lots of those kind of things, and that should revitalize, restart. It's not really restart, but that will help the economic activities to grow. I think the biggest problem Japan will be facing is what we're going to do on this money spent. Right? So we are heavily we have heavily, indebted, and we are spending more money than before. So the public debt compared to GDP is one of the highest in the world. So that is going to be the big issue.
We will have a lot of challenges because one of the biggest news out of Japan, of course, this year has been the resignation of Shinzo Abe, right? So this will be a key topic and challenge for the new government. How well do you see them tackle this issue, and what kind of suggestions do you have?
This is Japan. Changing prime minister is not like changing the president of the United States.
Okay.
so changing the prime minister of Japan changing doesn't really matter a lot. And actually, new prime minister Suga, he's doing great. I mean, it's been only like 2 weeks or 3 weeks so far, but he's been doing great. And we don't see any, negative headwind because of the Shinzo Abe step down.
Okay, let's hope for the best. I would like to move on back to the Philippines, to His Excellency Mr. Dakila. I hope you're fine wearing the mask there. We have...
Okay.
economic news, of course, coming out of the Philippines. We know that because of the pandemic,
Okay.
the economy has plunged to the lowest level in 29 years, the biggest recession in 29 years.
Yes. Yes.
Second quarter GDP is down 5.5%. So it's
It's
really
a minus 16.5.
yes. So tell us how tough is the situation and how do you see a potential recovery? What are the ingredients needed to kickstart the economy once again?
Okay. Actually, what I'd like to emphasize is that we came into this situation in a position of strength. The contraction in GDP really emanates from the restrictions that we imposed in order to contain the spread of the virus. But so given that we have gone into a recession and our projection is that the economy can shrink by between 4.5 to 6.5% this year. But once we have uh, relaxed these restrictions, we are expecting a strong bounce back and the growth of 6.5 to 7.5% for 2021. And in particular, growth sectors can include IT, telecom, and infrastructure. Infrastructure because of the government's infrastructure program. And of course, as we shift to a new economic arrangements, that will prove as a boost to telecom. But uh, when we look at the other parameters on inflation, we are well within target for this year and over the next 2 years, the policy horizon. And uh, actually, the balance of risks are a little bit tilted to the downside with respect to inflation because of, again, the potential impact on global and domestic growth from the COVID-19 pandemic. On the peso, we're one of the most appreciated in the region, and and that can be attributed to what has happened to the balance of payments. It was a very strong performance for the first half of the year. Actually, $4.1 billion surplus from January to June. And what we're expecting is that the balance of payments will be in surplus for the entire year. Now, the current account, which we had initially projected would be in a deficit position, again had a strong surplus position for the first half of the year at $4.4 billion. And it again looks like that for the entire year, the current account will be in surplus.
What
The
are the main factors driving the current account into a surplus? Do you think
yeah,
really
one is we have seen both exports and imports contract, but imports have um, contracted faster than exports. Again, this is across the board. So capital goods, consumer goods imports have gone down, but the oil has also helped to bring down our import cost. Again, we are seeing a bit of a recovery in oil prices, but um, with that, imports will still be still will be down. So the offshoot of this is, as I've said, the currency is quite strong, and our international reserves are at a record high at more than $98 billion. Remittances, we had projected would contract by 5%, but year to date, we're seeing that the contraction will only be about half of that. And for 2 months, we've actually seen a recovery in uh, in remittances. So it looks like the impact on remittances may not be as worse as we had expected, and that is also going to help in the current account position.
Let's hope that we see a pickup in the recovery very soon. I would like to bring in China as well. Unfortunately, we do not have the AIIB chief economist here with us because of logistical issues and technical issues. But of course, we have to talk about China because the three of you are joining me from Asia. It's the Asian century, and China is the second largest economy in the world, doing a lot of trade, a lot of business with all of your countries. So, Ms. Koirala, China, with the Belt and Road Initiative, is heavily invested in Nepal as well. There are very important bilateral relations as well. To which extent do you think can China maybe help in the recovery when it comes to trade and so on with Nepal? How important is this going to be?
China is our neighbor. One side we have China, another side India. And China is our friendly country and has been supporting Nepal in hard time. And we, of course, China being one of the largest economy and just being our neighbor and so big country with so many population and developed country, we expect that China will support Nepal in future to recover our economy. And we also get a lot of support from Japan. Japanese are also very friendly country to Nepal, and we have been getting since long, for maybe about 40 years or so, Japanese help and support. And now the China is also one of the largest economy, and of course Nepal has many possibilities. I'm very optimistic that Nepal, from all these Asian countries, we will get support and we will manage our economy.
Okay, Ms. Matsumoto, Koirala just mentioned Japan, and you are obviously headquartered in Tokyo, but also have business in China, the US, and you have to mention the US-China trade war and the elections in the US. We just had Trump-Biden, the very heated debate, of course. And what kind of issues does this pose to you? Imagine, to move into other countries as well, like Nepal, with Monex Group, to avoid, these geopolitical issues? Or what's your future plan when it comes to the business of Monex Group?
The question
Well,
okay.
yeah, the China issue is really annoying. I mean, U.S.-China tension is a big issue, and for Japan, because of course, Japan is just next to China, and China is a very, very, very important kind of partner. But meanwhile, Japan is true ally of the United States, and the U.S. current U.S. administration is putting lots of kind of sanctions or limitations to U.S. corporations to trade with Chinese corporations. And that actually, it's not just for the US corporations. Some regulations actually apply to Japanese corporations as well. So, for example, just like this Monday, the Kioxia, which is the how do you say, a part of Toshiba, which is creating a flash memory or those kind of things. And Huawei is the big buyer of that flash memory from Kioxia. But because of the U.S. regulations, sanctions, after September 15, Kioxia cannot export those flash memories and others to Huawei. And because of that, they stopped IPO. They were preparing to do IPO, but and then they finished the book building last week. But this Monday, they canceled the initial public offering. So that kind of thing, already happening. And also politicians, politicians again, between politicians and the private sector, usually there's a lots of kind of two-way discussions. But once it comes down to the national security issue, politicians becomes very strong, and the private sector cannot really negotiate with politicians. So I think the current U.S.-China tension is really kind of, over caving some negative pressure to Japanese economical activity. It could actually last much longer than the COVID. Because COVID, as I said, in Japan, it's not very large. And it won't go away. But if it's SARS or HIV or whatever, once it was very big, but it kind of, calms down in the society, right? It takes maybe 2 years, but just 2 years. But this US-China tension can last like decades.
For a long time, no matter the result of the US presidential elections, we just have no future clue, right? There's so much uncertainty in the world. Doctor,
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Your Excellency, Mr. Dakila, of course, the Central Bank of the Philippines is also actively involved in discussions with other central banks in the world. What about the PBOC? Can you update us on monetary policy discussions with the PBOC when it comes to currency swap agreements or any other, discussions you have with China? What kind of collaborations and cooperations you would like to see with China?
Yeah. Well, the discussions, the policy discussions are through with other central banks in the region, and in particular on how to enhance the safety nets available to the other central banks. So that is the thrust of the discussions now. And other areas of concern would be how to move forward the interoperability of payment systems. As we know, as we shift to new economy arrangements, the here in the Philippines, what we have seen is an acceleration in the use of the digital means of payments. So this does not really pertain to China in particular, but to the means of doing a trade as a whole. Now on the China, of course, China is something that we are watching. Actually, prior to the pandemic, we've listed the trade tension between the U.S. and China as one of the main downside risks to to trade. And it is good that we now can see China recovering, and there is uh, with that chance that China can again serve as an engine of growth in trade for the region. As you know, Asia is heavily dependent on global supply chains, and we cannot really grow if there is a growing tension in the area of trade. But having said that, we're also in the Philippines not really that dependent on trade as an engine of growth, and there is a focus on the domestic economy in our case. So that is also one reason why the contraction in the second quarter is really that say large spike in contraction. So again, I think that's what I have to things that we are looking at.
Can play the role of economic growth engine again, just like it did after the global financial crisis. Ms. Koirala, I heard Dr. Dakila briefly talking about supply chains, disruptions, and so on in Nepal, which is a mountainous country, very much based on tourism income and so on. I guess the disruptions have been really hard as well. When it comes to digitization and new technologies and so on, what kind of areas do you identify as potential growth drivers in Nepal? Is it also, things like blockchain, crypto? Like, what is the latest state of the art in Nepal? Where do you see opportunities?
So, with China, Nepal has like signed the project PRI project, and under the framework of PRI, Nepal is already, it has signed the project, so Nepal can take a lot of advantages from the BRI, this project, since we have already signed. And we are lacking technology in Nepal. Last time we suffered a lot with earthquake, and our schools and framework of the schools was all damaged, and now meeting again another catastrophe in Nepal. So we have to also think about through the BRI we can recover the economy, and we have also become a member of Infrastructure Bank in China, so we can also take advantage of that and also from World Bank and Asian Development Bank, etc. We can take a lot of financial loan and support. And technology this time with the pandemic, our schools are suffering. The children are suffering the most because all the schools are closed. We don't have this online system. We don't have Wi-Fi everywhere. The access is not there, and no, also the computer people don't have. Wi-Fi system is not there in the mountain areas or in the remote areas. So children are suffering their education. Nepal is one country, I think, where there is actually for 9 months now, 10 months, children have no school. They can with their exams, they can go to school. So we have to see that we have to go for the digital system, online system, and we have to develop the technology in Nepal, and which we can get support from different development.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We just have 1 minute left. I would like to give the last word to Oki. Oki, an online securities brokerage. What kind of new, technologies are you developing? Just in 1 minute, please.
Well, the lifestyle is completely changed, and we just need to adapt to those changes. And so every day, innovation. We just need lots of innovation. As I said at the beginning, changing regulation proactively from us to be talking to the government. That is something we are focusing on right now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Koirala, Mr. Matsumoto, Dr. Dakila, Your Excellency. Thank you for joining us today, and thanks to our virtual audience from all around the world. Apologies that not every participant could make it due to the technical problems we faced, but let's make sure we connect on LinkedIn, on other social media platforms, and stay in touch. I wish you all the best. Stay healthy, stay safe, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.